Welcome to Black Hat Windows 2K Security, held February 14th through the 15th, 2001 in Las Vegas, Nevada. The following videotape was recorded live at the conference and produced by the Sound of Knowledge Incorporated. This is videotape number 12, More Technical Track, Reverse Engineering.
We're still waiting for one more person, but he can come in after we're started. So the panel will include David Litchfield from AtStake, Ophir Arkin from syssecurity.com, David LeBlanc from Microsoft, and Havlar Flock from Teso. Yes. And this is a spin-off from a panel we did in Amsterdam, which was sort of, what do you see a year in the future? So we've renamed it to the Time Machine. And everybody now is putting on their time machine caps, and they're transporting themselves a year into the future, and they're thinking about what the problems are going to be. They all are doing fairly interesting work in computer security, and so I want them to talk about tools that they're working on now that may be released in the future. And so knowledge of what's happening now and how that will impact a year from now the security industry. And so we've got three big topics, which are going to be changes in threats, changes in defense, and then any big paradigm or technology shifts that may affect us a year from now. So that's our general outline. And after we kind of touch on those three topics, we'll go into a free-form discussion. But at first, each person's going to basically just say a word about what they do and a quick overview sort of their position of what they think the issues are. And then we'll move forward. And I'll be the light-handed moderator. I'll only cut you off if you start really getting off topic, or sometimes people seem to get locked onto one issue and they can't move beyond it, and that's when I'll jump in and karate chop them. So other than that, I should be sort of in the background. So with that said, we'll pass this microphone back and forth, and since there's only one, not all the panelists can speak at once, which would make things a little bit more sane. So that's been known to happen, I'm sure. So we'll pass it down to David, and we'll start off.
Good morning, everybody. As Jeff already said, my name's David Litchfield. I work with AtStake. I'm heavily involved in application assessments, network vulnerability assessments, and the like. And as such, I believe the security lies in the application level. What I've noticed over the past few years is the underlying operating system and the application software, such as, for example, Internet Information Server, when it's being configured the right way. But what's letting the actual general setup down is the application. Invariably, we are finding in our assessments that we're breaking through poor coding in the application, something which is bespoke to that company. And obviously there's a lot of documentation out there that tells you how to secure a certain web server, how to secure a certain host operating system, but there's very little documentation out there that's going to tell you how to secure your own bespoke application that has been written. That's why I think the future lies in looking at more at the application that has been written in-house. Anyway, moving on.
My name is Ophir Arkin. I'm from syssecurity.com. I do TCP/IP research, fingerprinting, and active and passive. I agree with David that the problem lies within the application. I think that the organizations finally understood that how to use firewalls, how to use those filtering mechanisms, but the bottom line is that the applications still provide grounds for hacking. I do think that there are other stuff within TCP/IP suite that can be found, and this is the area I am working on.
Hi, I'm David LeBlanc. I'm one of the few people that's actually allowed to hack Microsoft. It's my job to do penetration testing on Microsoft's network and try and make sure that our assets stay secure. Most days I seem to succeed. Kind of agree with the comments Dave made. But also something I'd like to point out is that security management is extremely important, and that to properly manage the security of a network is a different problem than managing the security of a collection of single machines.
So the separation between technology and humans, basically, two whole separate issues.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's not also just the humans, but how you put the collection of machines together and the ways in which you administer them, because administering trying to secure a network of 100,000 machines is a very, very different problem than trying to secure a network of 5 machines. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I see as being an evolving body of knowledge. And one of the other things that I think I see coming is the evolution of home networks. I'm wondering how long it's going to be until someone hacks my microwave or something like that.
While we're at hacking microwaves, well, first off, I'm Halvar, and I'm a reverse engineer, so I take apart stuff that's closed source. And I agree with everybody here that application security is important, or is probably, or will still be the big thing in a year from now. And I agree totally that the stuff that's written in-house is usually pretty bad because the programmers in-house don't know much about security or haven't been properly educated. But I think that you don't need to have the stuff they've written in-house in order to attack them. There are many people who are still using closed source, and there are many people who are using open source. And open source is bad if nobody reads it, and closed source is not read by anybody outside the company anyways. So I just think code will stay bad and systems will still be hacked. And when it comes to microwaves and all those appliances, they will probably be running some small embedded circuit or embedded chip, small chips with stuff written in plain C and not in any kind of more secure language. So once people figure out how to execute stuff on your microwave or on your DSL modem, for example, that's going to be really interesting. Just imagine a distributed flooding network of DSL modems.
Okay, so now everybody has a basic idea of where our panelists kind of stand. We're going to move on to then basic threats, and we're going to try to have each person basically say what they think how the threats will evolve. And then I want the audience at any moment to spring up and ask questions, raise your hand, challenge the panelists. And there's Greg.
Hi, you moved the room.
I know.
I was up there looking around.
It's a shell game. Oh.
Is there still a spot for me? Or
Yeah, right here. No, I'm protecting it. It's right here. Okay, so before we move on to the next point, we'll just have Greg do his introduction. We're just doing a, sit down here.
All right.
We just did sort of an intro and who you are and what you see the threats to be in the future. What you see the big problems are.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Hello. My name is Greg Hoagland. I've known Jeff and been working with him at Black Hat for a couple of years now. And I've known for the Rootkit project at rootkit.com. And my history is primarily in security scanners. And so I think that's pretty much my expertise, is kind of threat evaluation from remote. And I've spent quite a lot of time evaluating Windows kernel level security and stuff like that.
So what do you see changing between now and a year from now in the threats? Do you see scanners becoming more important or less important?
Okay, so what I have seen is a lot of automated sort of auditing tools kind of floating around in the community, things that can automate the discovery of something like a buffer overflow. I've seen a lot of like Unix tools, command line stuff that can do things like that. My friend JD about a year ago wrote a little program for NT that did something like that. And my company that I work for now is actually attempting to build some software that can do this professionally. So I think that you're going to find that there are the knowledge base in the community is being codified into tools better. And the result of that is probably going to be more and more exploits. I don't think code's getting better at all. I think you're going to see more and more complex code being put out there, and it's going to be just as bad as it was last year. Bugtrack's still going to have buffer overflows every single morning being posted on it. I think the problems aren't really going away. So intrusion prevention stuff rather than intrusion detection, and you're starting to see that now, like a host-based system that can stop a bad system call before it actually goes through. So it's not after the fact, it's kind of proactive. I've seen some stuff like that coming around. I also see in the industry right now a lot of people trying to do correlation between scanner output and intrusion detection systems so that you can kind of minimize your false positives. I've seen a lot of work going on there, and I think that's going to get a lot better.
Yep. Okay, so then what we were moving into then was threats, sort of from your own personal experience in the industry and with your friends and over beers. What do you hear people talking about as the neat new attack? You know, what are the old attacks that nobody's paying attention to anymore, and what are the neat new things people are working on? You know, what's going to be the killer attack of next year?
Well, if I could predict that, then I would probably be able to retire at the end of next year.
You know, like a couple of years ago, people were talking about denial of service. Like, how come nobody's done a massive denial of service? And it just took a couple of years until somebody got around to doing it. But we speculated about it years ago.
I think the scope for threats is extremely huge at the moment, and I am personally surprised that there is not many more attacks and defacements going on. Just in terms of having been authorized by companies to look at their web servers, invariably there are easy ways in, you know, not just a difficult way in. So if I extrapolate this model of the web servers I've worked against and assume that the rest of the internet is like that, then why there has not been many more defacements, or not necessarily the attacker's motive is to deface a website. That's probably some puerile 16-year-old who's going to be doing things like that. But whatever the end motive of the attack is, I'm surprised the problem is not more prevalent. In terms of new threats coming out, well,
I mean, a lot of people shifting to Windows 2000, they're focusing on that, so you think the new stuff will be...
Well, I think Microsoft have got it more right this time in terms of, we all remember Windows NT 4 when that came out, and the sudden rash of bugs that were found and needed to be fixed. Win2K, I believe, is a much better operating system. I'm sure it still has one or two problems, but I think the number is far greatly reduced. In terms of moving to new software, let's face it, software operating systems, they're becoming more and more functional these days. Now, as soon as you layer functionality or more functionality on top, that's a way in. There's bound to be a hole somewhere. So as we continue as consumers to demand more flexible and greater functionality in our software, the more we're actually opening ourselves up to risk. Now, it depends on whether you buy it from the vendor, all turned off or all turned on. Microsoft's problem, I think, is everything comes turned on and you have to turn everything off. I'm of the school where, you know, sure, have functionality there, but make sure it's turned off. So on a base install, you know, nothing works essentially, except, you know, maybe you can serve static pages from a web server or something. But if you require that functionality, then it's a simple case of, like, check this box and it's turned on, and then you can go ahead and use it. Moving on.
You just click the unsecure box. Yes. Yeah.
We were talking in Amsterdam about the issue of routers. I think it's a bit neglected. Each time we look at the operating systems and we miss the routers, I think there is a lot of research to be done on this area. As you know, the iOS codes floats around. Somebody let me look at that, and it was like, holy shit, what the hell goes here?
At one point, daily builds of iOS were available.
Yeah.
So lots of people have source access.
Right. Now, I think it's a matter of time that someone will find something inside routers, operating systems, that will be a major threat. Just imagine someone taking off your router, and that's it. You're off the internet. It doesn't mind if your router got hacked, or your operating systems, or your e-commerce site. You are not there. This is the thing the media will look after. I think there are a lot of misconfigurations around there where the education fails. Everything should start from the host level up, and people just need to be educated to do so. I think, like Dave here, that Microsoft really did a better job with Win2K. I think Active Directory, when people will start using it, will be another nice issue to look at, since the knowledge is not that big about it. We will see that in the future, I think. As long as the Microsoft application will be with much more functionality and bigger and bigger, I think the possibility of finding something, again, we will have more chances of doing so. I think there is a shift in the acknowledgement from Microsoft about what should be changed and how the software should be written. I have talked to Mr. LeBlanc here for 45 minutes about the ICMP stuff. I think Microsoft finally realizes that things should be done a bit different, and there is someone in Redmond that listens.
I appreciate some of the positive comments. That's quite a change from years past. Nice change. I think that the threats that are going to be changing are, we're going to see a lot of the same old thing. I mean, somebody finds a new bug, somebody writes a script kiddie tool, and now all of a sudden all of your computers are getting attacked with it. Somebody writes a new virus, and now all of a sudden it's spreading around everywhere. Or somebody writes a new worm. Worms, I think, are going to actually be something that are going to be increasingly prevalent. Sitting around beers, most security people I know have talked about the evil worm that would take over everything everywhere if only somebody as smart as they were wrote it. But not wanting to end up like Robert Morris and going to jail, most of us just talk about over beers and don't do anything.
Well, there's the that famous ADM DNS worm. Is 3-4 years later, people are still finding the ADM DNS worm propagating around the internet.
It's still out there.
Yeah, it's still out there.
And there's more and more worms turning up over the last year, and so I think that there's something that'll probably increase over the next year. Question?
Yeah. Would you say that at least the recent email wars are strictly, let's call it a manifestation of the issue discussed earlier of adding functionality too quickly without considering security implications? That most recent wars were either JavaScript or actually or OCX utilization of JavaScript.
Well, it's really common in a lot of things. First you add functionality and then you add safety. Like how long were we driving cars before we thought to put seatbelts in them? Quite a long time. Okay, how long were we driving cars before we thought to put airbags in them? Even longer. When are we going to get around to putting collision avoidance in them? Probably a while in the future. So if you look at other parts of human activity, you'll find that this is actually fairly normal behavior. First you figure out how to get something to work, and then you start seeing ways that maybe it should be improved. One of the things that you're going to see, though, is you're going to start seeing a strong reaction. Like, for example, a lot of these worms and things are shut down if you're running the Outlook security patch. Outlook 10 or the Office XP or whatever it is, the next Office is going to default to very secure. It's going to default to as if the security patch were applied. So that's going to make life harder on the virus writers. Now, is it going to shut?
And on the
administrators, and maybe on the users for a while. So, you know, it's going to go back and forth, and is it going to shut down the virus writers completely? I don't think so.
I think,
but maybe it'll make it harder on them.
I think Dave has a comment.
Well,
Sure. You want to go next, so.
Hey, wait a minute, I'm the moderator. Dave has a comment,
I'm sorry.
and then you'll go.
I think recently with, for example, the I Love You virus, the problem was not security of like Outlook Express, it was the user actually opening up the attachment. Now that's just a case of user education, you know, don't touch anything that has a VBS.
That won't happen. I was extremely proud of myself working or being formally in charge of security in a company where no technical virus protection was installed, and we had 2 infections, 2 computers infected, not 2 epidemics of the entire world, because people were educated enough not to open the attachments. That can happen in ideally in a 20-people company. It might happen in a 50-people company. It will not happen over the internet.
Sure, and you also have the problem with the home user as well. They turn their computer on twice a year if they're lucky, and they've got this mail saying, I love you, and oh, how sweet, what's that say? Bang, and everybody in their address book has been infected as well. I think first and foremost, we have to educate the user, because no matter how secure an operating system is, if the user does something wrong, then it's game over.
Sort of like the police come and do DARE, drug awareness training at school, you have to have the don't click on the I love you virus training at school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, one real short comment before.
Wait, let's hear the...
I'm sorry.
In that study, the I Love You virus is surveyed all these hundreds and hundreds of users, and like 37% would say they click on I Love You again, and out of that 37%, 11 of that 37% were infected. So certainly user training is important, but I think you got to have the tools to say, no matter how much you train a user, they can have their computer shut down and taken away, and a year later, they'll do it again.
Well, you've got to make
you're out.
You got to work on it from a lot of different angles. No one angle is going to solve the whole problem. And sure, you got to make the system more secure. But I guess my comparison is you start teaching children from very, very young, look both ways before you cross the street. Well, there's a whole bunch of people using computers that don't know the equivalent of look both ways before you cross the street. And that's part of the solution is getting a body of knowledge out there to where, you know, even little kids understand there's certain things to be aware of and to perceive as a threat with respect to a computer.
Okay, we're going to move on. Halvar never had a chance to talk about future threats, so Halvar?
Anyways, well, I'll forget what I wanted to say about those worms. Anyways, I think future threats will be probably, well, there will still be the application side, ASP pages, all that stuff. But what's really going to be interesting is format string bugs in closed source software, because format string bugs have only been known since last summer. I don't know of many vendors that consequently audited their code for them. And they're around everywhere.
Format string bugs?
Furthermore, I think will be a really interesting way of attacking systems is trying to get your code added to the CVS in an open source environment. You write code, you make an intentional, very subtle mistake that is very, very hard to spot, and then there will be 2 people reading it, and those 2 people or 3 people will not necessarily be clever or smart enough to spot that mistake in the first place. So your code will be added to the CVS, and you'll have general keys to I don't know how many computers. And afterwards, nobody will be able to prove to you that this was intentional, because it could have just been a coding screw-up.
So a good example of that would be?
No, that would imply that
that's true.
Been done.
Right.
So there have been some major things on Bugtrake lately that looked more like an intentionally placed mistake than something that would happen while coding, because there are things happening where coders will bend over backwards to do things that are not in the RFC, and that would lead to problems. So that's kind of where the entire idea comes from. And then there's another thing that I think is a definite threat. There is a big discussion among the underground right now whether to keep stuff private or not. And there's a big discussion in the industry whether to keep stuff private or not. So I think we're kind of at a junction here. We can take, or it'll happen that we take either the road of disclosure, or the industry will start keeping stuff private and the underground will start keeping stuff private.
Is that new?
No, but
I don't think the
actually,
problem's new, but I think that the ways you can disseminate the information on BugTrack or other mailing lists is...
Actually, like a year ago, a lot of people who are, like, used to be black hats or whatever, were still posting to BugTrack. And they kind of, if you look at BugTrack now, there are a lot of people who don't post to it anymore and who will not publish any exploits anymore. And I have the impression that more stuff is kept private now than it was a year before. So
I think once some of the hacking groups, some of their best tools got leaked, I think they decided it was time to clam up and make sure that they still retained supreme control, and it was up to somebody else then to find their bugs.
I mean, just look at it. Format string bugs have been known to certain people apparently a couple of years ago, and nobody else knew about them. So these people had general keys to any computer in the world, and then somebody posted the first format string exploit to BugTrack, and the entire issue got known, and within a couple of weeks, most of the format string bugs were gone because they're very, very easy to spot. Now, if I was a black hat and I'd have keys to many computers, and I would want that to last, I would be pissed right now because it's not there anymore. So I think that might be one of the reasons why people are starting, well, why some people are starting to keep stuff private. Yes?
Oh, wait, let's let Greg do his, and then we'll go to questions.
Actually, I kind of agree with David LeBlanc quite a lot. I think that worms are something that are going to be a problem. And I'm not actually convinced that those worms are going to be through your email. I receive email a lot, and oftentimes they're signed with a PGP key, and I know it's a friend of mine sending it to me, but I know in my mind that if he had a virus on his system, that virus could just sit there and wait for him to type in his little key password, and then it could have signed it and sent it to me. So that it's signed actually doesn't mean that it's more trustworthy than if I just got it from him in the first place. The worm still could have done that. But I happen to know that code quality is very, very poor, and format string bugs, that's just one example. Buffer overflows have been beat to death, and everybody knows about those. But if you get into reverse compiling binary, you'll find that within the parsers, the things that actually go through and parse strings for delimiters and commands and things like that, almost guaranteed, if you look at it long enough, you're going to find a way to manipulate that to get around it. There's situations where you have multiple parsers where the results of one are being passed to a second, and the two parsers have no knowledge of one another's like command sets or delimiter sets. You start playing with those, playing them against each other, you start to figure out ways to insert content through there. That old ASP dot bug that show code bug from way back, that was an example of that type of exploit. That plus dot HTR bug, all this stuff is just going to continue, and if you start getting into reverse compiling these things, which people do, I think there's probably a lot of stuff we don't even know about that people have found.
Is that like homogeneous networks? Do you think the world's moving toward a kind of dual Linux Windows environment, and therefore...
Are you reading my notes over my shoulder?
No, I should be.
Actually, Jeff was pointing out a very good point. The other problem, and this relates directly to worms, is a monoculture environment. And we were talking about iOS just a few minutes ago. We have a monoculture routing environment in Cisco, and we have a lot of people who have the source code to iOS. I've seen exploits posted on BugTrack that were so obviously from someone who had seen the source that, I know it's out there. So let's assume for a moment that somebody finds a problem in routing software. It doesn't have to be iOS. Pick anything that's well deployed, or a Wintel platform. This bug is not an email virus, okay? It's something that's going to get into a piece of infrastructure hardware and either crash it or sit there and undetected and leave a back door. Maybe I can get in and get, what's it called when you're in iOS and when you super user?
Oh, enable?
Enable, yeah, I can get the enable prompt through some sort of back door. That's a real possibility. And I think that worms, you have to remember, worms don't have to travel through trust relationships in email. They can travel through buffer overflow, such as the one that ADM released a couple years ago for DNS, or any of these other bugs that are, their code problems are in there, and they're not getting out of there in a hurry. Over the next couple of years, I think that we're going to find more and more tools to enable people who code and people who deploy systems to find these bugs, whether it's language tools, black box testing, or whatever. But for now, the playing field's pretty open.
One was a question?
Okay, sir?
First of all, regarding black hats keeping things to themselves, I don't think that's something new. You may consider that people who used to be open and release their vulnerabilities early for one reason or another decided to stop doing that. And still, I think if a hacker found a vulnerability, she will want the credit for that when the information starts to get out. So, and it's justified.
Well, I think maybe in the past when the only people that had the skills to find these kinds of bugs were hackers that were more, their motivations were maybe more pure, but nowadays pretty much anybody can get decent security knowledge and find bugs, and they don't have to come from the background of these people. I mean, you take your favorite organized criminal and put him to school, and he'll soon have the capability to find these problems. And so that puts more of a burden on the people willing to talk about them to publicize and open source things as fast as possible to counteract, you know, this new culture of criminals willing to, you know, to keep it secret.
Something about black hats not disclosing stuff, of course that's not new. But what is new is the amount of people who were sort of black hats, but they would publish stuff on Backtrack and moved away from that is increasing. And secondly, there is a movement inside or amongst those people that those who do not publish will sewer all connections to those that do anything public. And up until now, it was more like a friendly thing. If you found something, it was your decision what you did with it, whether you kept it private or whether you published it. Now, there are a lot of people that care more about their relation with other hackers, like about socializing them, than about fame on Backtrack. So they will decide that if my friends start suing their connections to me because I publish stuff, I will not.
Did you say flooding the connections?
Sorry? Sewering.
Oh, severing?
Severing, oh sorry, severing the connections. So if friends start or groups start to shun each other because somebody from another group published something, I think more stuff will be kept private. And there's a webpage actually where this entire discussion has gone public, so everybody can basically follow amongst it. That's http://anti.security.is. So, well, that's it.
I'd like to follow up on that. I still don't think that any of that's new. I've seen, I mean, there's people that won't even talk to me because they know if they tell me that, well, you know, I've found a bug in such and such, I'll go get it fixed. And that's been away for a long, long time. And I see things, you know, that kind of percolate out of the black hat community because really the greatest coin of the realm for a hacker is to have the zero-day exploit that they figured out and nobody else knows about. That's the coolest thing you can possibly have. And most people, a lot of people are in this, their motivations are to feed their own egos. And so if you've got the cool zero-day thing and nobody else knows that you've got it, well, you don't get any strokes for that. So you have to go tell at least your close circle of friends that, hey, I've got the cool zero-day thing. And so your friend goes, ooh, cool, you know, and that's where you get your strokes, you know. And so you tell your closest 5 friends, and then, you know, they'll tell a couple of their friends, and it'll very slowly propagate until it hits somebody who, you know, says, gee, you know, the world needs to know about this, or they will covertly tell someone who is in the white hat community, and then bam, all of a sudden it goes public. I mean, I've seen stuff that stayed in the underground for months and months and sometimes years, and then all of a sudden came public. I mean, I heard rumors about being able to crash NT with weird packets. That's all I could ever get out of people was weird packets to 139. And then a few months, a year later, WinNuke came out. I think that's probably those weird packets I was hearing about. So I don't think any of this is new. I think it's the same old stuff, just on a bigger scale because there's more people doing it.
Sir, in the red.
It's
sounds like a pendulum swinging back and forth. I remember the BBS days where you had the equivalent of not-speaking BBS, where everybody would share their exploits. And then you have undercover people come in and revealing things. Then you have the internet, the great big public internet where you can post things and not be accountable. Now they're learning that they can be accountable, they can be tracked. So it's going back the other direction of the what's being applied.
I think there's an important point. I think there's an important point being made here, though, and that's that this kind of the full disclosure movement or the bug track lists and those things. I think there's an awareness now that those are not the. There's a corrosion of the view that those things are the religion, that, if we have everything that BugTrack has said, then we've fixed our bugs. That's clearly not the case. And I think everybody here has said it, they know people who've had an exploit for maybe even a year before they've even seen it being posted or anybody else knows about it. So the fact is there's a huge collection of exploits being circulated, knowledge about certain buffer overflows or whatever that nobody's going to know about for a long time.
Let's see, in the audience, how many of you people read BugTrack? Just raise by show of hands. How many people think full disclosure is the way to go? How about full disclosure with notification? I should tell you, there's full disclosure with notification, and non-disclosure. So I want to see full disclosure. What's the fourth?
Well, for example, if I work for a closed source company, and I discover, let's do.
What's the fourth way?
The fourth way is if I discover something about my company or about a third company which has a strategic business relation, I may choose not to disclose this particular information because of the business reasons.
So that'd be non-disclosure.
Well, no. It's a partial disclosure. I would disclose something with which I have no special way of notification.
Would you disclose it to the strategic partner?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So you're saying it's disclosure only to the business entity and no public disclosure?
Well, I can recap my view of the disclosure issue, and it basically means we want bugs to get fixed as soon as possible. And the way to do that with someone who has a commercial product is to apply pressure on them in the form of, look, the exploit is out there.
Right. Okay, so let's go for the show of hands. For the full disclosure with notification? Anybody for just plain old full disclosure? In case that the vendor doesn't want to fix it, would you still disclose? Okay, and then non-disclosure, dealing with the vendor privately, and if they don't release something, too bad. Sort of the old CERT model.
It does kind of depend. It depends on if you like the vendor.
I can tell you a story about Novell. I think I told that to the class I taught. Novell has a bug with the ICMP time exceeded error message. So I was looking to notify Novell so they can fix it. So I'm at their website sending an email to security@Novell. Well, guess what? There is no email address at Novell like this one. So I was sending information to information@Novell and support@Novell. Nothing. And I think they know about this bug for 3 or 4 months now, and nobody do really nothing about it. And it's like so unique. So if you do the active fingerprinting and get those results, you know that this is a Novell box. So it depends. I sure say we need to notify the company and give the company a reasonable time to fix this stuff. Especially if it's a widely used application, because then it may affect a lot of people that do patch their system and do security.
Okay, did you have a comment?
Sure. Ofer's brought up some quite interesting points there. I think before we see any fundamental shift in the security paradigm, there has to be culpability, basically. Who is responsible? Is it the software vendor who has produced the buggy software, or is it the person who has released the exploit publicly? For example, everyone in this room will probably remember the HTR overflow in Internet Information Server 4. Were Microsoft to blame for that? Well, to a certain degree, of course they were, because they coded the issue in. Was EI responsible for making it public and, giving out an exploit that was going to allow someone to root someone's box? Well, to a certain degree, of course they are. I'm all for proof of concept code, but something which is going to be benign. If administrators really want to see the effect that's going to have on their systems, this particular bug, then sure, nice benign proof of concept.
Sort of like release the code, but no easy-to-use, click-to-use interface.
Well, not necessarily that. For example, every time I find a buffer overflow, I will touch a file, basically. Now, sure, someone with the requisite knowledge could hack my code and get it to work and do something nasty, but hey, if they've got the knowledge to do that, they could write their own one anyway, yeah? So, now, until we as consumers stop accepting dodgy goods, for example, if you guys bought a car and you had to fix new windscreen wipers to it and replace the wheels, you would send that straight back to the vendor, and say, look, I'm completely unhappy with this car. A few years ago, Ford produced a car when the left-hand blinker was blinking and you were doing this with the handbrake, and a car hit you at the back, the car would explode. They were held responsible for that eventually. Until the software industry is held accountable for their mistakes in a big way, I don't think we're going to see any fundamental shift. I believe sorry, I'm shaking here. There was an issue with Toshiba a while back where they knew about a problem in their floppy disk drive controller, and within about 1 in 10 million floppy drives, it would cause a cyclic redundancy error that would wipe the data basically off this floppy drive. And I think they had to settle out of court in the end, and we're talking about billions and billions of pounds for the out-of-court settlement. Now, until we see that happening more and more, vendors will keep on producing shoddy software because, hey, they can get away with it. It's not their problem. They are not culpable. And when we see this fundamental shift happen, when they are held responsible, that's when they'll go okay, there's no pressure to get to market, let's make sure whatever we do get to market is good.
It's sort of, how do you escape the shrink-wrap license?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know though. I'd like to speak to that. I mean, okay, the internal number that's bandied about is that it cost us about $100,000 just to produce a hotfix. It actually cost us a lot more than that, because if I have to go make somebody apply that hotfix to 5,000 or 10,000 internal servers, that's quite a lot of money as well. Okay, so we've got every motivation not to screw up, so that we have to release hotfixes. I mean, we try very, very hard not to screw up. But nonetheless, as long as you've got human beings coding, things are going to happen. I mean, there's
there's 5 bugs per 1,000 lines of code on average.
Yeah, if there's only 5 bugs per 1,000 lines of code, you're probably in pretty good shape. But there's a significant motivation not to ship bugs, and people put things into place. And now one thing that is really interesting, I can't really quite get into the details of this, but maybe some of the other people know something about it, is there's a lot of research going on into systems that can automatically find pieces of code that are either definitely bad or you should at least take a look at. And there can be some substantial improvements in code quality by using automated code checking tools.
So you could sort of have an NCSA or ICSA seal of approval and the Super Code Tester program seal of approval, that it successfully passed Super Code Sniff.
Well, it's a hard problem, because how many different ways are there for programmers to screw up? Quite a lot. Yeah. I mean, I see Todd in the back smiling. And so trying to write a program that detects the number of different ways that programmers can screw up is, you know, that's like the traveling salesman
That'd
problem.
be like a mathematical hard problem.
Yeah.
There's a level to that, though. There is perfectly possible to write software that can find trivial bugs. And actually, probably most of the exploits which are published, say, on BugTrack are trivial bugs.
I think Havlar specializes in this kind of thing.
Not directly, because I'm not working with source code, but it's definitely possible to, well, spot the trivial stuff without having source, which can be quite interesting. I mean, anyways, that was not what I was wanting, or what I wanted to comment on was, there was the liability issue up here. And I think David said that the vendors should be held responsible for bugs in their code. Now, if my car blows up due to an accident, that's a different thing as if somebody, well, like drills a hole, or, you know, I haven't got my gas tank secure enough, so somebody drills a hole in there and the car blows up when I start the thing. Now, there's a definite difference in liability here, because in order for a bug to be really dangerous, it has to be exploited. And nobody's running around hitting forts from behind to make him blow up.
Yeah, intentional. Just wait for him to put his blinker on and I'll get him.
That's the main thing I want to aim at, because it's impossible to write secure or to write code that can be verified to be secure. Or perhaps it's possible. I don't know about Ada. I don't know about people doing research on that. But generally, there's so much code that has so subtle problems in them that it cannot ever be automated to find the real interesting stuff.
So sorry, I'm sure if the software vendors were held responsible, we'd find a way pretty goddamn quickly.
The space shuttle's only blown up once.
Yeah, and people are I want to make a point here too. Certain software is the people who write it are held accountable. You can certainly bet that if something goes wrong with a CAT scanner and it turns the guy into a vegetable, somebody's going to be held responsible for that. Same with the space shuttle or anything that's a critical system. That code, there's code. I used to work on a project actually for the Department of Energy that detected when a roof was going to fail in a pillar retreat coal mine, and the system used these sensors, and it would only give you about 30 seconds warning, and it did all this calculus based on the pressure that was being placed. That went through an OSHA approval process. That was put into a gigantic room in the Midwest where they had this hydraulic press where they could crush a Mack truck to 2 inches high. So they went through a lot of testing for this code, and certainly systems that are critical systems are put to the test because there is real money behind it.
But the entire idea of holding software vendors responsible for creating bugs will basically kill open source. Because definitely, if you can be held responsible for a small screw up on your side and that has huge implications legally, you're not going to add your code to any other software anymore. You're not going to give out your code anymore.
You have a comment on that?
It would force open source. Because the only way to get out of perfect liability is to have everybody work on it collaboratively.
Well, who would be liable then? So
everyone's not going to work on it.
That doesn't work.
You're still not responsible for open source code. I mean, it will, if you look at the big company and you're like sitting with a CEO and you said, yeah, I want to put an open BSD box here because it's secured. And he will like, okay, who will give us support? So you will not put an open BSD box inside your multi-billion.
But Red Hat supports Linux.
Yeah, but still, they will choose to go if you're going to put a Unix inside your organization. They will go for rather HP or Solaris, and this will be the solution. Now, I want to comment on something that was said here. If I am a sysadmin and I running Win2K and I want to secure my IIS server, I go to TechNet, right? I'm looking for documentation about securing Win2K. Well, go to see if there is a document that says how to secure Win2K. I don't remember seeing that. I see the only IIS server. Sure, you got lots of stuff there, but not one document stating, hey, I want to do that, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I only...
It's up there now.
No, it's for IIS-5.
For IIS-5, you can do that. Okay, so I'm applying all this stuff, and I'm getting hacked. So what's now? Who's reliable for me being hacked if I'm especially a big corporate and all my money got stolen? This is another question we have to think about.
Well, I want to try to keep this more on the technological side as opposed to the legal, moral side, because we're technologists and not necessarily attorneys. So let's try to move into more technical issues. Miss?
Now, I carry a different perspective. I find this conversation very enlightening, but I'm sure all of us exist in different boxes, so I'm coming from mine, from an enterprise and corporate level. Now, when I'm listening to you say, well, you know, there's exploit and vulnerability in this inherent in this software, I'm not necessarily sure that's always the case. And for an example, I'd like to use the analogy of Melissa or the I Love You virus that's delivered, you know, its payload through Outlook Express or Outlook itself, that client. Now, Outlook is not malfunctioning here. It's doing what we pay for it to do. It's delivering the mail to our generic users. I don't feel that the generic user has to be educated to use the product correctly. That the user did nothing wrong by clicking on that link. What happened was a malicious programmer took advantage of an operational piece of software. Now, what you're not considering is the byproduct of that situation at the enterprise level. The byproduct of that is a whole new field of software like the WorldSuite that strips off executables, Windows scripts, you know, so we don't have to worry about delivering a bad payload to our users. That goes to configuration management. I happen to be compact, and that's how I make my living. So is this necessarily a good thing or a bad thing? I think that this causes the whole industry to grow. So, you know, part of the conversation I'm hearing up here is not really applicable.
I'd like to agree with that. That's one analogy that I've often used is how many cars and highways are vulnerable to the boulder off the bridge attack? You know, so I can be driving down the road and some schmucks put a boulder in the middle of the road. I'm screwed. I'm screwed. I'm probably going to get hurt. So we running around asking GM to, you know, to make our cars invulnerable to the boulder off the bridge attack. No, we're trying to arrest the little bastards that put the boulders in the middle of the road. You know.
Actually, would anybody try to hold the car manufacturer like responsible for that? Like for the car crashing when it hits a boulder?
I would probably hold them responsible if the steering column went through my neck. That would probably really make it a bad thing for me. You know, the car is supposed to crash in a certain way that is like somewhat safe, right? If Volvo's always driving off with
So the failure modes of the system are known. The system doesn't fail in an unknown fashion.
Perhaps we should blink a happy on there where it just exploded. You know?
Well, I'd also like to follow up just very briefly on the whole disclosure issue. An analogy I leave is let's say that I, you know, leave my house and leave my, you know, front door wide open, and you come along and notice my front door is wide open. Well, is it better to come find me and tell me my front door is wide open, or is it better to like broadcast it on the evening news? I mean, there's some, I think, ethical responsibility on the part of people who find problems to attempt to get them rectified in a manner that causes the least damage.
That example, though, is kind of like saying that David LeBlanc's door is open. That's like me saying, oh, I found a vulnerability in Compact's website. I'm going to post that on BugTrack.
Okay.
This is different. It's more like saying that the ADT security system that everybody has installed has a flaw in it, and publishing that on the...
Okay, well, that's even worse. Let's say that you find a way to cause all Craftsman garage door openers to just instantly open when you walk by the house. Is it a better thing to create like the, you know, universal garage door opening tool and distribute it on the corner in bad neighborhoods? Or is it better to go to Sears and say, look, I've got this universal garage door opening tool, you really need to have a recall? Now, you know, in one way...
What happens when they don't recall?
What happens if they don't recall? well, then you've got a problem, and that's when maybe you need to go public. I'm not at all suggesting that if a vendor does not cooperate at all, that you should just forget about it. I mean, I personally went public on a vendor because they...
Full disclosure with notification. Or notification and then full disclosure.
Try and be responsible. I mean, if your objective is to help make people more secure, then try and work towards that objective. If your objective is to screw up people's websites and cause mayhem, well, then, okay, you know, take whatever action you feel is appropriate.
The gentleman in the glasses back?
Just about what Dave was talking about, and the other gentleman saying, you know, contacting Bill Bell and no response. How far should we go as customers? And I spoke to you in the hallway with the current problem we're having, you know, the next 20 where a vendor is not responding. How far do we have to go? We do not want to go public.
Do you want to buy their product?
Instantly have dozens of servers are open to attack, and we know how to do it. With a 25 computer can do it.
Can you hit them in the pocketbook?
How much noise we have to make to that company before we go public?
Well, and there's no other product alternatives.
Sorry?
There's no product alternatives. You're stuck using this vendor's product.
We could probably make an alternative, but we're already several $1 million into the project and spending several $1 million more on fixing one DLL, I think.
And the cost of a successful attack would be, if the problem was known and they did attack, the losses would be greater or less than that.
I'd say it's highly situational. Are you better off having this be public knowledge than if only you, okay, you know how to blow up your own stuff. Okay, fine. Well, if the whole world knows how to blow up your stuff, are you better off?
That's why we haven't disclosed it, but on the other hand, this exploit is so simple.
Somebody will figure it out sooner or later.
In hindsight, most of them are.
You're right. You're exactly right. I mean, considering that the result is a blue screen of death, the attack takes less than 3 seconds.
Oh, sure. No. I understand. But
how do we have to do this?
there is no firm answer. There is no.
Also to consider what happens if they release their product and it's insecure because they couldn't get the vendor to secure the underlying infrastructure, and someone else finds the problem.
A year later after fire.
And then they're allowed legally responsible because they knew about that before they released.
Okay, sir? We're going to just kind of write that one off because we can talk about that for the rest of the day.
Can I just...
Okay, we'll let Dave have the final word here.
Every, when I say small, every security hole affects one specific area of the operating system. But don't concentrate on that small area. Think about defense in depth. How else, if we can't fix the code ourselves, how else can we prevent this problem? For example, if it's an issue, another WinNuke attack, you know, well, if we block this at our board routers, you know, any incomings on TCP 139, then we have mitigated to a certain extent that risk. Don't think about the small issue itself. Think about every single way that you can attempt to prevent this particular problem. It's all about defense in depth. And when you go public, if you have to go public, don't just talk about here's the fix to fix the actual issue. Talk about defense in depth, because that will also preempt the next problem. The next time there is like a WinNuke attack on 139, you've already laid your defense that prevented the other problem, so you know it's preemption of attack as well.
Sort of like if you had an application-based firewall, you just say this string is never allowed to reach my web servers.
Well, I personally I don't believe in pattern-based IDS. I would rather look for anomalies.
Well, I mean, for example, if they know specifically a certain string blows up their boxes.
Well, exactly. If, for example, two double Fs, you know, hex FF, were to screw up every single web server, no matter who the vendor was, then obviously block that at you know, some application proxy or something. Now, when it's also discovered that Netscape Enterprise Server had the same problem, well, who cares anyway, because you fixed it, you know, you preempted that problem, and you don't have to worry about it, you know? So defense in depth is certainly, I think, the way to go.
Okay, we're putting rest to that issue and moving on to a new one. We've talked about threats, let's talk about defenses. What's each person's impression in the way that the defense community here, defense meaning people who design network security defense tools, what's going to change in the future? We'll start with Greg this time at this end and move down toward David. It can be passive or active defenses.
I think there's two things I'd like to mention. I mean, certainly there's probably going to be a lot of things out there, but definitely application layer inspection at the firewall is, before the packet gets through, something like, there's a new firewall technology, it's not new technology, but there's something called air gap is floating around I've heard about. And the idea is that you're going to get this information in through your firewall, but if you poke a hole through your firewall port 80, it's not going to stop a buffer overflow or some kind of content attack on your CGI scripts. But if you have some sort of application layer inspection at that point in your network, you can do things like put the little string in there to say, you know, if there's 2 double Fs in a row, I can stop it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's going to be some technology emerging in the market that does that very well. It won't work perfectly because, like we were saying earlier, pattern matching is actually not the best way to do it. Perhaps anomaly detection is, but I don't think that is very well evolved yet. So the other thing I think that we're going to see is more and more sort of integrity assessment within the actual operating system itself, which goes to my talk yesterday where I was talking about the rootkit, getting into kernel mode and doing all this stuff. There are ways to prevent those kinds of things from happening, but they have to be done at the operating system level by Microsoft, and it has to ship that way. So hopefully we'll see some changes in that area.
Generally speaking about firewalls inspecting the stuff that passes by them, that will mean the firewalls increase in complexity, and that will mean that there's more possibility of a firewall level compromise. Now, if the firewall has to parse a lot of user data, they're bound to screw up at some point. So I'm a bit careful with recommending more code at the firewall.
But is that the Marcus Raynham's point? Was do you have many distributed eggs in many baskets, or do you put all your eggs in one basket and watch it very closely? How is an easier way to concentrate your risk in one spot and pay a lot of attention, or just have a huge open field of?
Of course, it's better to have a firewall and to guard the one basket, but the problem is if the firewall gets compromised, you're screwed. Definitely, because, well...
Wait, let us finish first.
Anyways, when it comes to defenses, I think there is a lot that can be done on an operating system level. There's a lot that can be done, or that has to be done through auditing the in-house stuff, auditing your own code. And then there's stuff you can do at the CPU level, like, non-executable pages are a good thing to make exploiting buffer overflows pretty hard, or exploiting format bugs pretty hard. There are ways to do this even on the x86 platform. They're not intended by Intel to work this way, but it works. There's a homepage for this, which is PAX, or I think it's PageExec, like PAGE, exec.virtualave.net.
Virtual, how do you spell it?
Virtualave, AVE.
Virtualave.net.
Yeah, and that's basically a Linux patch which implements a trick to have non-executable pages under Linux, which will have a really non-executable stack. Now that's something that's going to be really annoying to exploit. You can still issue one exec vcall, but still it's a step in a good direction. And I think Itanium IA64 will have non-executable pages anyways built into the CPU itself, so you will not have to figure around with some undocumented crap in the CPU anymore. So that's going to be a big step forwards.
So the application developers use the non-executable code of the CPU and Itanium. That could add a big benefit.
Well, I think it has to happen at the OS level.
Okay.
But another thing is buffer overflows will stay dangerous if you overwrite other things like internal data. Format string bugs will stay dangerous because you can read stuff out of memory. But, reading stuff out of memory is not always as dangerous as executing your code. So, actually, I think we need more code auditing. I'm looking forward to Itanium and non-executable pages, because at that point, NT will have non-executable pages. And I don't think that adding code at the firewall is a good idea, just because I know the more code there is, the more bugs there are. Are we getting through first? Or?
No, we're going all the way down.
I'd like to follow up on Dave Litchfield's comment about defense in depth. This is an extremely important mental approach to take. It's also very closely related to something that I call security fault tolerance. You plan on your hard drives to quit spinning, you plan on your cars to get wrecked, you plan on your CPU fans and power supplies to fail. Why don't you plan on your computers developing security holes? They're going to do it. So accept it. It's a fact of life. It's going to happen. Hopefully you'd like it to happen as little as possible, but plan on it happening and design your systems to resist it. I mean, when I set up a Bastion host, I don't ask the question, well, if this gets hacked. I say, well, when this gets hacked, what happens? All right, let's assume that a hacker has complete control of this box. Is that going to mean that the entire back end behind it falls over? Hopefully not. Now, design your networks to be resistant to that. If the question that, if you say, well, what happens when this falls over? If the answer is oh shit, well, then you've got a poorly designed network.
So you just think more study in the area of network security fault tolerance is the way to go?
Just a lot more sensible planning. I mean, none of this is new. People have been building networks and all sorts of systems like this for a very, very long time. But a lot of people don't. They build computer networks that have 1,000 points of complete critical failure, and that's the wrong way to do it. And then you also, in terms of defense, you also need to know where your security dependencies are. If I can hack this box, then that allows me to get into that box. If that box then allows me to get into 10 other boxes, I can keep going. And so if you understand how your computers are related to one another, then you can plan these things out. And a lot of people don't plan these things out intelligently. And if you do plan it out intelligently, then you can go a long ways towards making a much more secure network.
Ophir?
I think of a lot of people that build what they call secure networks do the mistakes and rely upon one technology. I think it is more than important to build a multi-tier approach for security at your perimeter. I think I've once built a 5-tier access point to a network, because when the packet filter will fail, there will be the proxy server and then the other gizmos. Just having one box that will... Gizmos.
Gizmo is good. Okay. Yeah.
I think that building one box that it will do everything is a mistake. I will always want to have, for example, a box for packet filtering, and then a box doing a dedicated proxy, and then a box doing something else. Because when I have failure on the network level, I will know what happened. I can always do load on those boxes, and I will troubleshoot them better. So if I look from the network admin view, it will be better. If I will look from the security admin view, it will be better. And I will have all those multi-tier access points to my network. Now, Greg here referred to air-gap technology. Well, from my understanding, air-gap technology is no more than a good proxy. Sure, it prevents something to get inside, but only what you tell it to do. I think that application inspection, and especially if you were at the web hacking class or talk yesterday when Samuel Shaw and J.D. Glaser showed those tricks they do, well, Those tricks works because nobody looks at the data field content of the HTTP protocol. If there will be a product that will look into this field, and I think that much of the stuff we see today will fail to entrance, because lots of people say, okay, I allow only GET command on the HTTP protocol, and that's it, I'm secured. Well, guess what? We have the data field, we can feed whatever we want to inside. So if someone come up with a product that will look into the data field and say, I analyzes my application, I know what should be inside this data field, then a lot of our troubles will be gone. And I think David mentioned this before, we need to analyze our applications in order to understand what is the data flow between the users and the server. When we will understand what those patterns are, we can then filter better and see if there are some misbehaviors or some other patterns we see that shouldn't be there. So as long as we see this happen, we can say, okay, something wrong is going on here. This is good for banking application, this is good for SQL application, this is good for everything.
Before you can put any technological solution in place, I think it's more important to first look at your business model. What does this particular project exist for? And when you know the purpose for that, keep it simple. That's first and foremost. If you keep things simple, then your exposure to risk is considerably reduced. Once we know what we're going to put it in place in terms of technology to promote this, you know, the functions we require to do as a business or organization, we can then start layering defense on top of that. Now, obviously, you have your stateful inspection firewall configured correctly. You then have perhaps an application proxy that is going to be sat in between you and, the attacker and the web server that's actually analyzing what's going through. Now, just picking up on that point just briefly, I think the best way to do it, we're never going to be able to preempt the next attack that's going to come out. So the way I look at defense is say, well, we know I want to give access to people on my site, access to default.asp, home.asp, search.asp, and foobar.asp. If they request anything else, hey, I know it's not on my site. Well, it doesn't exist on my site to provide functionality. It might exist, sure, because it's in the samples directory, but I don't want to give them access, okay? So what we do is have a weak catalog on the machine in between the attacker and the web server that says, if it's a request for anything other than these pages, then simply dump it. Yeah, send back a 404, even if the file does exist on the web server. Getting in between the attacker and the web server is crucial. Now, not only that, you could then say, look at the response coming back from the web server. So even if something does manage to slip through, invariably when you run a CGI scanner, you know, you'll get a like 404 file not found, or a 500 internal server error, or something. If you get a 200 response, you know, it's there. The vulnerability probably exists. Now, if you run a CGI scanner, maybe 100 will come back as a 404 file not found, and 1 or 2 as a 200 if these two bugs exist. So what does that say to me? It says if my web server is sending back a 404 response to the client 100 times, someone's attacking me. So just dump their IP address, reject it, send them back a 404 file not found every single time. So rather than that's a look at an anomaly, by the way. Our web server is doing something it should not be doing if someone is surfing my site in the correct fashion. I should only be serving 200 responses as opposed to 404, 403s, 501s even, you know, not implemented. If they're not trying get or post, why are they doing things like options and stuff? You know, you wouldn't be doing that from a web browser. So I think pretty much we're all saying the same thing here. It's all about defense in depth on both the macro and micro level.
Okay, so before we get into the question, oh, I'm sorry?
Yeah, well, we all talk about stateful firewalls. We need to understand that they are not the magic box. And if someone sells you and says, yes, this is a stateful firewall, you need to understand the protocols it's really stateful with. I mean, not all firewalls are stateful with all the protocols they claim they are. So you need to check this really in depth, really understand what you are open for, and just if you go to the vendor, he will say, yeah, sure, no problem, we do so, but eventually there are surprises out there.
Okay, so before we go to the questions and answers, I'm going to do a little Kyle McLaughlin group here. So the questions to the panelists are, honeypots and IDS systems, do they just purely notify you of problems, or do they actually increase your security? Dave. Yes or no?
Do they increase us?
Do they increase your actual security, or are they just telling you about a problem you have and not actually help solve the problem?
Personally, I would say no, but
No.
I have to explain.
Over
why.
here.
Well, as a member of the HoneyNet project.
Yes or no?
Well, they help you, but not in real time either.
Okay, that's a maybe. Dave.
Yeah.
Ophir. I mean Havlar.
Security is too complex to say yes or no.
The Zen answer. Greg.
Yes.
Okay, and now we have a controversial topic, and we'll move to questions from the audience. Please, if you're asking the question to a specific member, just let us know which one. Sir.
I think clearly that this is kind of in the...
This is to the panel.
Yeah, and kind of you, because you mentioned something about this in your deal. You know, education is probably the best defense that we can have. And though we all want to write the next sexy exploit and get our thing on bug tracks, I mean, what really is happening out there, blank SA passwords that have been out forever. We've got Cisco as a password that everybody's routing. You know, we've got these persistent, very easy, non-sexy, but extremely vulnerable systems out there. And rather than forward thinking about what the next cool exploit is going to be, I mean, how you're talking about disseminating some information via your mailing list that's now going to be some new format that doesn't get drowned out in the bug tracks. You know, last night I had 40-something bug tracks. You just go to delete who cares? You know? I mean, how are all of you guys going to model your education? I mean, Microsoft's education model, I think it's fantastic. They have all kinds of information. All you got to do is look for it. But that's not the case with everybody else. So I'm just kind of wondering what your education model is going to be looking like here, what you see the trends going to, and that kind of thing.
So maybe a better question then to the panel would be, how do you guys learn? I mean, where do you get your information from, and how do you sort through the crap and make an intelligent decision of what counts and what doesn't? Is it purely mailing lists, or do you count more on friends?
What, for discovery of exploits?
No, or just how do you increase your security knowledge? Is it through books? I mean, where does the information flow?
Go to Reddit to plan briefings.
I think, at least for me, most of mine has just been from personal research and experience and things that projects I've chosen to undertake, which have then, by undertaking the project, clearly taught me about this particular subject. I think most of the material out there in books and stuff nowadays, at least in the defense in depth stuff, is actually pretty good. I think there's a lot of good reference material out there for this.
But I mean, you count on, let's say something.
I don't read BugTrack. I don't need it, NT BugTrack. It's all, who cares, you know? I don't need to know about the last 300 exploits that have been found last week. It doesn't matter. It's the same bug coming back over and over again. Why don't we fix that one particular bug, and maybe this whole class of exploits will just go away?
Right.
Well, I guess I mostly rely on personal research and friends. If you speak to people, then you'll get new ideas. You'll come out of your box. You'll come out of your way of thinking that probably knock you on your hind feet with some weird thing they say. But in the end, it gives you better ideas and increases what you know. I have to admit that I occasionally read BugTrack. But other than that, it's a problem that there's a lot of white noise on many security lists, and there's a lot of advertisement on a lot of security lists where you have a 3-line advisory and 80 lines of advertisement for a particular company. And that is really, then there are people like pimping their own products on BugTrack and not accepting that there are other alternatives. And that's something that's really gets annoying after a while, and you kind of switch off, and BugTrack is pretty much a write-only medium for me nowadays.
I'm in a really different position. It's part of my job to try and secure Microsoft. And one of the mental pictures I have when I'm sitting up there on our network is I feel like I've got this big target painted on my butt, you know. And we can verify this. I mean, we pop up in IDS just about anywhere on our public networks, and we see like tens of thousands of attacks per minute. And these are a lot of times, sometimes you've got people scanning for, you know, Solaris bugs on Microsoft's network. Yeah, right, okay. But you've also got some really very serious stuff going on. And so I pay attention to BugTrack because sometimes it can only be a couple of hours between the next cool exploit hitting BugTrack and people trying to screw my servers. And so I try and watch all that kind of stuff very, very closely. I also learn and get a lot of information from my experiences building tools. I mean, I did a lot of work with the internet scanner at ISS, and one of the ways that I tried to combat my now friends at Network Associates was to try and take it to a new level and try and develop a tool that more effectively audits a network. And that's actually what I am doing at Microsoft, is building tools to better audit a network, because nothing that's commercially sold is capable of effectively doing a security audit on a 100,000 node network in a reasonable amount of time and doing it in an intelligent manner. And so I've got a pretty cool piece of code that it's not there quite yet, but it does a lot of that. No, we're probably never going to sell it, but it's a cool thing. And so while also, you know, one of the reasons I came to Microsoft is because, you know, my problem is to secure a 100,000 node network. That's a really interesting problem. I think it could take me a long time to get bored with that problem.
At least a whole career.
Yeah, you know, I could go with it for a while. You know, I've been working on it for 2 years, and it's still fun. So that's held my attention better than just about anything else.
Lots of my stuff comes from personal experience, personal research. When I've looked at ICMP stuff from the books, I'm sad to say that not all books about TCP/IP really gives you the accurate information. Some of them are old and are not updated. So beware of the books you acquire and buy. I think in the last 2 weeks, BugTrack have turned into a blah blah mailing list. Whoever wants to say whatever can send an email there. I don't think it is moderated in a way we really want to. Usually it was just the exploits, if there was a comment, a valid comment on the exploit, and that's it. Today is, how are you? I'm feeling good, something like this. Also contribute to Snort, which is a free IDS solution. I think it advanced a lot from version 1.6 to version 1.7. I'm glad to say that I had some stuff brought into there. And I think that the information is not only in books and not in the, well, you mentioned Microsoft website. They have lots of nice stuff, but sometimes the stuff you look for is simply not there. Well, Mr. LeBlanc here can just argue with me, but I don't think Microsoft gives you, at the end of the day, everything you want to know. I'll give you a simple...
Pretty big. So no,
I'll give you a simple example of something I was looking for. Microsoft Media Server, or how you call it, WDM. Well, you know, to say they encrypt this stuff so you can sell movies from a server, then your target audience can watch it encrypted, and they cannot copy it, blah, 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 blah. So we went to Microsoft and said, okay, what type of encryption you're using there? So we want to evaluate if it's really hard to break it, or was it that simple? Then, well, sure. Then, well, guess what the answer was? Well, this is a proprietary information. You will not get it. This is really nice. But if I want to put some kind of a server out there and sell services, I need to know this information. Just one of the examples I can give here for a lot of stuff like this in Microsoft applications.
Okay, let's move on to, oh, do you have a comment?
I'd like to have a very short comment on that. I mean, that was basically copy protection, and copy protection is always about security by obscurity, because basically I don't think that there is, or if there is, I'm not aware of a way that actually protects digital property without obscurity. So
in your experience, every copy protection system has always been bypassed?
Well, all copy protection systems can be broken. If they run, they can be defeated. It's just a matter of time. And if Microsoft plans to make it hard to break that stuff, they have to push the amount of time to break it upwards as far as they can. So I can understand that they restrict information here in order to keep the security, the security by obscurity of this thing high enough. So copy protection is always about not giving out information.
Audience question? Sir?
In reference to the honeypot.
Is this the whole audience?
Yes, or actually all of mine. I happily expected to hear the answer of maybe if the information that's gained is actually utilized. But why the difference is one person says yes, one person says no?
I think it's all risk mitigation. I mean, Dave was talking about defense in depth.
Yeah,
Everything is risk mitigation, and if you've got an IDS, you're mitigating your risk better than if you don't have one. So as long as you don't make the false assumption that you're 100% protected because you have this one component, you're not making that mistake, then I think you're doing the right thing by having it.
Because you're going to respond to the information the honeypot provides.
I would like to have more information than less information.
I think that all of us would have answered yes or no with qualifications if we weren't forced to yes or no.
I think specifically with honeypots, you have to make the assumption that there are people who are more clever than you out there, and your honeypot can often blow up in your face, depending upon how it's done. So, moving on.
The amount of information you can get from a honeypot is very important. I agree here that you need to set it up in a way that it won't be possible to break from the honeypot into your network and put your honeypot in a different segment or physically separated from your other networks. The kind of information we see in the project is very valuable. Most of the stuff we see are regular script kiddies trying to do whatever, but we get information sometimes about new stuff that is really nice to see the traces and to see how this new exploits and vulnerabilities works. And I think this thing really provide a way to understand better and to learn better how the other side works.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but I have another Kyle McLaughlin question here. And it's going to be, you have $100,000 in your organization. You need to increase security. Do you spend that money on a honeypot, or do you spend it on training an administrator?
Train the administrators.
Same.
So I think the honeypot's a
Training.
honeypot's a good thing if you have the budget. Basically, cover the basics and then go for the more advanced.
Well, honeypots is not I don't think it is a product. You need.
Yeah, it's a research tool.
Yeah.
If you productize a honeypot, guaranteed someone's going to come up with a way to. Yeah. He'll figure out a way to make a ping scan that'll detect that it's there and it's done.
Well, it can also be a good, just regular alarm system. There was a wannabe hacker that was a programmer at ISS who, from his work computer, telnetted to a Navy server and logged in with username same as password, and 15 minutes later, some high mucky-muck in the Navy had the VP of engineering on the phone, and the guy was fired and out the door within an hour. Well, they detected an attack and they shut it down. So, you know, I'd characterize that as useful.
Right. Oh, no, I mean, I believe in honeypots too, but I'm just trying to, you know, I've got to stir up controversy here and get people talking. Okay, so we're pretty much done. We'll take one more question and then we'll go to a break. Sir? Yes?
So just some of this is just being the maturation of good engineering practices around design, a lot of these issues. And if I've engineered my system as fit for purpose, you know, then I should have redundancy. If I'm designing a SCADA system to control 70,000 miles of ammonia pipeline, fault does not, I mean, you can comprehend the consequences. Remember, you don't put email servers and internets and firewalls, which is simply not in that world. So I just want your question on, do you see us as an industry improving our engineering practice or staying about the same?
I definitely think it'll improve because I think that's the solution.
Well, I assume it will improve.
Well, I mean, you know, your perspective over the last years, is the system improving?
Are we improving or are we just kind of, holding?
You know, in your experience of security work.
Well, the thing is, as long as you add new stuff, you're bound to have, as David said, if you add new stuff, you're bound to have problems with it. So basically, systems get more secure if they're stagnant when it comes to development, but they're in use. And as long as they're not stagnant in development and the growth goes faster than the fixing of bugs, then they're not getting more secure. So it's...
I see a lot of improvements where I am. I mean, I see a lot of people you know, trying to administer their networks more securely. I see a lot of people making you know, I see some really neat code auditing tools in use that are flushing out all sorts of interesting things. I see a lot of effort in that area. I also see that there's a big task for everybody to do. I think that security it's maturing. It's an area that's maturing, and I think we're going to see a lot of progress. So yeah, I think it will get better.
At the end of the day, it really depends who built your network. If it's your internal personnel and they are not trained, then you have a problem. If you hire someone to do that and he is bad, again, you are in trouble. If you hire someone that has the knowledge, walks you through all the stuff, then you are okay. It's not like, you know, they all here saying it depends, and sure, we're getting matured, but who gets matured here? The educated people, the people who got trained, the people who look at Bugtrack, the people who followed patches, the people who read Microsoft stuff, who are the advisories, those are the people who get better and better. The lower level technicians or the guys that simply need to install something, sometimes there is not enough money to educate them, and we're still having the same problems as we did years and years ago. You can look at recent attacks on, for example, on my country in Israel. I mean, the amount of default installations of Microsoft NT4 and IIS, well, I'm embarrassed to say, but you see the same problems. It depends upon who you get. It depends upon your personnel.
Dave.
Do you see it becoming licensed? Like, we don't let anybody design a bridge. You've got to be a licensed professional engineer to design a bridge, because kids on school buses are going to drive across.
Well, to make that work, to make that work properly, you have to have kind of an underwriter's laboratories for code somewhere, and that's not currently set up.
If you're speaking, for example, about all the new wannabe, I certify you for what the hell. Well, we can have that. I mean, I can give you certification. Just pay me. I mean, it's the same thing. The number of certified Microsoft engineers and all those security organizations that give us certificates, crap.
I taught myself C a few years ago from a book. It was Teach Yourself C in 21 Days, and the first thing it did was showed me how to do, like, declare a character array and call gets on that. And, you know, I think as long as the textbooks, you know, when you first get into the programming language of your choice, as long as they're telling you how to secure badly from the word go, the problem's still going to be here. There's going to be kids who are at school who are teaching themselves C from probably the same book. They'll go on to university, and it won't be, school over here, I think it's called. It's not going to be a few years until they realize that, wait, this might not be the best way of actually doing this, you know, in terms of security. So these guys will eventually leave, like, school, get a job, and maybe like Microsoft, you know, and start like doing bad coding on us all over again. It's going to be a repetitive issue until the textbooks change at the very beginning. You know, it's going to go on forever, I think.
I would say, in my perspective, management is usually the barrier. I see a lot of the administrators they have more access to security information, and usually the impediment is management wanting to spend the dollars. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, I've run into many more clueful administrators than I did before. So I'm very happy to say more people are kind of with it. It's just, it seems in the upper food chain, upper management still hasn't got it yet.
And as a final comment, I'd say, don't feel so good about those bridges. There's a reason we build them at 10-to-1 tolerance level.
Yeah, I understand. The thing is, to be a professional engineer, it's 10 years of apprenticeship if you don't do a bunch of college.
Right.
And same with electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, chemical engineers. I mean, that's a mature discipline.
Sure.
It's a long time.
I have 3 degrees in engineering. Don't feel that good about it.
I'd say market forces aren't going to allow that for a while. There's too much demand. Yep. So, okay, with that said, let's give everybody a round of applause.